Hello, everybody. Welcome to Breaking Bread with Nita Little. My name is Leanne Kowalski. I'm a colleague of Nita's. I am a white woman with long blonde hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing a brown sweater, and I'm sitting in a dance studio. This meeting will be recorded in speaker-only view, and a recording with closed captions will be made available on Nita's website after the talk. Today's topic is ensemble dancing as research practice. And our time will be structured as follows. We'll start with 20 minutes or so of a talk from Nita on the topic. And then we'll go on to about 20 minutes of discussion. And then I will lead us into a brief conclusion.
Yes.
And without further ado, Nita Little.
Hi, everyone. Hello. I welcome you to Breaking Bread. I am, just to state it, I'm a white woman wearing glasses, sitting in a room with a white wall and a black kimono above me. And I have long white hair. And she takes it out from under her ear. Anyway, today's subject is ensemble dancing as a research practice. I want to talk to you about that because it is the basis of the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication. And so what happens in ensemble dancing is always very interesting to me. The ensemble dancing that excites me is when people move together with a contact improvisation basis. They understand touch. They understand the spaces between one another through values of touch. Not all dancing values touch. Contact dancing values touch. Not all ensemble dancing values touch. Much ensemble dancing values the way people organize, the way people in space, which I also value but I value space tactily. I value space not just as a visual interest. Some ensemble dancing values the fun social interactions that can happen, and has a basis that is also verbal. All ensemble dancing is engaged relationally. All ensemble dancing is working, it has people moving with each other, with the space, sometimes with props or costumes or any amount of theatricality. And so I'm basically stating the obvious, which is that ensemble dancing, there are many varieties of it. When I'm speaking about it, I am speaking about ensemble that has a basis in touch. Now, for me, the mind touches. The mind has a tactile capacity. So the body is a mind. The mind is a body. They are not different if you're alive. If you're alive, the one arises as the other. And I use that word as very specifically because what I mean there is that they are at times indistinguishable one from the other. You change your mind, your body has been changed, altered, necessarily. You think a thought, it's already physically enacted, physically changed you. You change your body, and the mind necessarily is altered. how you can understand the world is altered. For this reason, I want to go back to talk about inaction. And many of you may not know what that term means. Inactivist theory is a theory that came from an interest in cognitive science and the study of cognitive science. And it was really proposed and put forth in 1991 by Francesco Varela, Aaron Thompson, and I don't think I know Roche's first name, but by 3 cognitive scientists. At least I don't know her name on the top of my head, or his name, could be a man. Basically, what an activist theory says is that cognition is not the representation of a pre-given world by a pre-given mind. So this idea that that the world is represented to us, but it is rather the enactment of a world and a mind on the basis of a history of the variety of actions that a being in the world performs. So in other words, consciousness arises because you're doing something. Alvin Noe, who, by the way, I have to brag, was on my dissertation committee. He is a cognitive scientist, philosopher, and I have to say, all of these people who are cognitive scientists within this interest in action are philosophers. They're wonderful to read and to talk with because of that. And Noe says, experience is not something we have, but something we do as a consequence of relating to our environment. Without a world, there would be no perception. As for consciousness, we enact it with the world's help in our dynamic living activities. It is not something that happens to us. And that very flatly kind of says it, which is part of the reason why I think dance as a research practice is so important. Because dancers, our deal is action, engaged action, relationally involved with our eyes, with our perceptual organs, as active perception, not passive perception. And when you start to understand inactivist theory, you then start to think, golly, this stuff that we do is really, really important because it's formative of the world and what we understand. What else can I tell you? Oh, I also pulled up these quotes by De Paula, Rode, and De Jager. Also cognitive scientists involved in action theory. This is quoting, natural cognitive systems participate in the generation of meaning through their bodies and action, often engaged in transformational, not simply informational interactions. Batson, Glenna Batson, whose book I recommend to all of you because it contains a conversation here about inactivist theory. And her book is Oh my gosh. I'll get it for you at the end of this. But I do recommend that you look up Glenna Batson. And she says these interactions give rise to flexible and adaptive dynamics or styles of relating. And that she's thinking of Schmidt. Our interactions underscore self-awareness, skill, and social. Our inactive practices underscore self-awareness, skill, and social interaction, which is again a quote from de Paolo Rode and de Jaeger. So I bring all of this up to you. The inaction really is based in many ways on work in that studies eye movement to understand what something is. The eyes are constantly in motion. And that motion matters. When we are doing ensemble dancing, we are engaged in embodied practices of understanding the world around us. We're deeply engaged in a constantly changing environment. The environment that is the other dancers in the ensemble, the environment of the room, the environment of whatever has been brought into the space, props, costumes, whatever. And the environment that it is an environment that has meaning, the constant creation of meaning. Two people stand next to each other is a very different meaning basis from two people standing one in front of the other in a line. What can be known, what can be spoken, how it is spoken is critical. So it's interesting in Batson's book, she says, you know, dance theories have not accepted inaction necessarily. It's not held as critical. To me, it is, particularly because of my vantage as a contact improvisation dancer upon the engaged. And here I can't use the word interaction anymore. I have to use the word interaction, because the interaction that happens as I'm dancing with a partner in a contact improv dance alters who I think I am. What I think I am. So when I am moving with a partner in a contact improv dance, I form the shape of Nita to be inclusive, at the very least, inclusive of my partner. So my partner's relationship to the floor is mine. That is an inactive practice in which I have consciously altered, deformed the physicality of Nita to reform it in the shape and size of the instant that we happen to be in, which speaks to the extraordinary flexibility of a body that is a mind. It's facile in its ability to here's a word, consume the space of being, to practice presence as an active practice, as an articulation of being. So when I include my partner, I now am the size of that partner. When I do that within an ensemble practice, I can constantly shape and reshape the size and space of Nita through my tactile lenses, through my inactive practice of being a touch-based human being. So the mind that touches, and I proposed this earlier, that I am a mind that touches. The mind that touches is that size. Make sense to you? I hope. So I find all of this really exciting and interesting and important. So why is ensemble dancing an important research practice? Because we're at the making baby steps. I'm taking baby steps with this stuff. And the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication, which is an organization, a project that I started in 2016 with a partner who kind of didn't participate for very long in it, but was critical to its starting. Now I have another partner, Leanne Kowalski, who's here on this call, is also partnering in the Institute for the Study of Somatic Communication because of what it can do in the world, how it really investigates what it can be to be a body that is mind, as an engaged individual, as engaged beings that function not as individuals of one, but individuals of many. That means I am already within my own skin sac, many beings. When I change the scale of that many to be inclusive of an ensemble, now we're talking about the many that I am, that is as a spatial mind. I am engaging through inactive practices as a larger being. I love this comment by that I read to you. Natural cognitive systems participate in the generation of meaning through their bodies and action, often engaging in transformational, not, I'm going to put in the word, no, they say not simply informational interactions. We take that transformation into a transformation of what it means to be an individual that is also many. So why ensembles? That changing environment, ensembles have the potential to investigate these larger shapes and forms of the individuals constantly working together as one another, not with one another alone. Yes, sometimes with one another, but with that transformation into the as, this larger form of being. And that is a practice of how they are articulating their presence. This, for me, is the basis of communication. This is, as the basis for communication, we can start to investigate modes of communication that are instantaneous, that are not reciprocal, that are not based in I do this and then you do that. Not reciprocal, that's not the word I want. Responsive levels of communication. So I'm not constantly bound by listening to you or feeling you move and then doing something because you did that move. And I am now engaged in actions that happen in which I allow you to move me. My body is this larger form and I can be moved by you without cognitively having, without thought having to intervene, because thought is slow. Thinking to move is slow. Dancers are excellent at moving as thought. And enaction theory really supports that potential for moving as thinking. I want to go back to Sheets Johnston, who I don't have her quote up, but basically her excitement is that there are other forms of thinking, other forms of being engaged in the world than simply mental, neurological, rational forms of thought. Okay, good.
Nita, you've got two great comments that you might open the discussion period with.
Really? Let me see a comment. I want to see a comment.
Both are in the chat.
Where is my chat? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing my chat. So, okay, here it is. Wow. Wow, you guys, I'm so excited. Great. So Kyle says, may I read it, Kyle? Or would you, why don't you read it?
It's a little bit loud here, and my computer might die. So the first one says, would you say that our perception affects our reality and our reality affects our perception in the same way as the body affects mind and mind affects the body?
Yes. I would say they're enacted. That consciousness, which also means reality, what we can understand about reality, is enacted. It is engaged. We're already engaged in a world that we are composing it. We're worlding. You know, this whole thing with Aaron Manning, and not just merely Aaron Manning, but it is Aaron's work that I really kind of turn to when I think about that. Even though Manning turns to, and I'm forgetting the theorist that she turns to when with that word worlding. Do you know? Can you remember his name? Okay. Okay. Important to find, and I happen to be very bad at name dropping. I can't. I'm not someone that remembers names. So although I long to be easy citing, I'm not easy at citing. I have to go back and research it and then come up with it. But I can indicate to you where to find it. Okay. What was the second one?
Found the ensemble dance we did at our workshop to be kind of heavy for me.
You're yeah.
I think it's like just because I'm new to in-contact improv, I'm still getting used to it, and it's pretty vulnerable and difficult to move past my own comparisons. There's so many performances. Everyone has a different struggle with expanding awareness. Like I'm thinking about all the different idiosyncrasies of why we can't connect to the whole. But is there a common denominator or principle within the mind's contraction that you found that restricts the ability for a dancer to expand?
There is an echo in your talking, which is making it hard for me to totally understand you.
I
So,
can read it. Why don't
okay.
I read it for you, Kyle? Kyle's in a busy coffee shop. Kyle says that I found the ensemble dancing we did at our workshop to be difficult and edgy. I suspect that's because of my newness to contact improv. It was very vulnerable and difficult to move past my own comparison with so many performers in the space. Everyone has a different struggle with expanding awareness, but is there a common denominator or principle within the mind's contraction that you've found that restricts the ability for a dancer to expand to include the whole?
Kyle, the mind's contraction to you, are you saying to where the mind, I mean, you're taking that as a given, the mind's contraction. So I'm trying to figure out what you might mean by that. Do you mean when you just decide you are a skin sack? The cultural norm that we are beginning and end at our flesh. Yeah. And that cultural norm definitely limits us. My work is to upset that cultural norm because of it, because of what else can happen. And so, and I do that purposefully. When you are a beginning contactor, I would not expect you at all to be able to do that. But if you're just walking down that street holding hands with somebody, I will point out that every step your partner takes, you're feeling, you're present to, just through the hand. And that you have slipped the girding of your cultural form to where now you're inside their body. That which knows it's not that their footstep comes all the way to your hand enacts and goes all the way into their body. Your tactile reach enacts to know what's happening. Yeah. That's how I would frame it. So you're already doing it, is basically what I'm saying, even though you want to dream that you're really only your skin. Okay. For me, the dream is of being individuated. The dream is not of being many. We already are. And, you know, and there's politics in that, and I'm not going to go back through those politics because they're very important to understand. The acculturation of the human being as an individual rather than as a multiplicity of being with extraordinary potential to shift and change what that means. Okay. Okay, so I have done my talking. Let's open up and let's just talk all together. Anybody can talk. So maybe what we can do is unmute, if you would and just pretend we're in one room together. This here is Zoom room. Are there any questions that you have? Any comments that come to mind? If not, I'll go in and talk about the ISSC and what we do and why ensemble there is so important. Ensembles moving together are constantly changing the shape and form of the individual. And how that forming communicates is very exciting, not so much as as something to perform as art itself, but rather as a research practice that investigates what a human being can be. And I am engaged, very powerfully engaged through the ISSC, with many people engaged with me and as me and me as them. We're in this creating of a form that investigates what it is to be a human that is not bound by this notion of the individual, and is investigating new ways of understanding the human in order to support better relational practices, relational intelligence. Because as long as we understand the human as a limited being, we will continue to reproduce that. That will form our reality, as you were asking, Kyle. Or Nicholas. No, Kyle. That was Kyle. That was not. Oh, you're on somebody else's. Sorry. Going off. Anybody have some questions? Comments?
I'd like to ask some questions. And thank you. It's very, very intriguing and exciting to think about that. And I guess my thought is still messy, but I'm thinking about because I'm feeling like what you talk about, the textile attention that's in the contact improvisation, and every time, like when I was operating in a dance making space, sometimes I find it hard to attune to that state that I have in contact improvisation. So I guess my question would be how to attune myself into a state in that making process, and even in that showing process, when there is like someone like being watched, like performing in front of people, which is a very different state of mind as I was in contact improv, and how can I attune to that state when I'm in a being watched state and my mind is not so much tuning into my interoceptive awareness.
Yeah, definitely. So I really make a distinction there between a performance practice and a research practice in the ensemble moving, because the performing practice is visually based generally. That's kind of a broad statement, but it's generally visually based. And that will throw the dancer into, because we are in this situation, we're not separate from the audience that is viewing us. It will throw us into a visual values, into really amplifying our visual values, which is not a bad thing. That's a wonderful thing. We love that. But to engage as a tactile with the tactile values within a visual context, very difficult. That's what performing contact improv struggles with. Contact improvisation is a boring performance practice because it doesn't know whether it's doing tactile or visual. And sometimes it attempts to do the visual, and then you see people enacting the same damn tricks. They're doing tricks. They're not in relationship that is really high grade relations, right? So ensemble dancing as a research practice, now you don't have people watching you. You're engaged with embodiment on the levels that are important to you, so that those inactive practices that are tactile can be amplified. Which is why we had to form the ISSC. The ISSC had to come about so that performance would not be a visual value within it. Make sense?
Yeah.
So I would say be easy with yourself. If you're in a performance circumstance and the values are visual, go for the visual values. Don't struggle with yourself. Figure out how to do a research practice that is tactile.
Mhm. And I guess that also makes me think about if it's possible, like the ensemble is not just the group of performers, but the the visual relationship with the audience is one agent in that ensemble, and if I can take into account how to form a more tactile attention to that visual attention.
Right, exactly. That takes time and practice. And generosity with yourself. A tremendous amount of generosity, because the values that are tactile values are very different than the values that are visual. They do different things. Now, for me, I'm constantly crossing the visual to the tactile. I look at a body and I am visually experiencing them tactily. I easily can cross that transformational boundary where I see feel. So I'm now engaged in seeing the activity of a mind that is embodied, and I can understand it through how it engages in all the modes of tactility, the shifts that happen. But I've been dancing for 50 years. But in terms of working with people, I very, very much love to train people to be able to do that work, to see the mind as in motion, to see the mind that is a body, that is a tactile, tactily engaged body.
Nita, there's a question in the chat I might lift to you. I think you're not seeing the chat, so
I don't read the chat because I can't talk, think, and read at the same time.
Yeah, so I
That's
thought
not my skill.
I'd serve it to you. I'm
Thank
just
you.
giving it right to you. It's from Rebecca. Also, hi, Rebecca. Oh my gosh. And it says, what about the term somo-aesthetic experience and the role of mirror neurons in regards to witnessing performance?
When I understood what dance could do in early days, I remembered being a teenager walking into the hall, the front door of my high school, where all the lockers line the hall. And on one side, and the boys would stand against the lockers, watching the women, the young women, walk into the high school. And of course, I might have a pimple on my face that one day. And I would feel as if the pimple was this gargantuan size and that it drew the attention of everyone. And so I became the pimple on my face. And I understood then that what dance does is it organizes attention. It organizes it draws and sends attention. And that part of the power of being a human being is to do that. And so and so the whole, of course, it was many years later that mirror neurons became an interesting and important understanding about the human. But I think mirror neurons don't go half far enough in their understanding. But yes, watching and experiencing a dance from the somatics as if you were the dancer, because you are being enacted, you are being moved through your engagement. The things eyes can do are extraordinary. The eyes that support a tactile body, mind. So the mirror neurons in early contact performing, I made a choice. Do I want to dance as a star? I could feel that I wasn't dancing like a star, not as I had danced when I was doing contemporary dance. I was dancing as a black hole. I was inviting the audience to enter my body. I was drawing them interior to the point of physical contact, so they too could be moving with this depth of touch, feeling the physics. So extraordinary to be a dancer that was based in physics. At that time, not based in visual shaping. And so I wanted the audience it wasn't conscious, but I felt it was important for the audience to be inside me. And then mirror neurons came up as an understanding of how that can be. So the question is, somaesthetic. I don't know what to think of the word somaesthetic. That's basically saying there's an aesthetic to how we touch or how we experience a body-based experience. Is that what you're saying, Rebecca?
It's actually a term I got from one book some years ago. I think it was talking about Meg Stewart's work. And I think it was an interview, and someone was asking her about the visual aspect of her performance. And yeah, if I remember correctly, it was either about her or about when we watch improvisation in general. I don't remember which article it was, but they were talking about that there's not just a visual experience of what we see, especially when we see dance, but there is an experience that is somato-aesthetic. So it combines the two senses.
Right.
So the somatic experience, so the first person perception,
right,
of what we see on something that can be also a tactile level. And I thought I just put mirror neurons close to it as a kind of like maybe something that works on an empathic level. But I should look back what the new definition, because it was a few years ago I looked at this term, somaesthetic, and it stays with me as a question mark. because I'm in the moment, at the moment I'm composing something, and I'm wondering about how to select the material and what feels good, what is like the performance is very tactile, but also I'm making a video now and I'm choosing the moment that look good, obviously, no? So I was just putting as a question mark what you're talking about, and
Right.
and this, yeah.
I think we don't make enough of the synesthetic of synesthesia, the ability. I mean, I'm not sure the synesthesia is the right word anymore, because synesthesia is a neurological condition. But
Yeah.
when we train synesthesia as a critical component of our art practices, our ability to understand that sight, when sight is touch, see, feel is a very critical capacity. It's a skill. Hear, feel is an incredibly important capacity. So are all the others. See, here. I've been training dancers, contact dancers, to see here. And to feel, particularly to feel here. So that their ensemble work is constantly composed of these, the sliding of one perceptual capacity into another, which is formative of yet another capacity. Because it's almost as if we had many, many more perceptual modes than just the five senses produce as individuated. When we stop this individuation, we start finding so much more is possible. And that's very exciting. And I'd be very interested in how the mirror neurons are engaged in that. I have no idea. I'm not a scientist. I'm interested in the skills. What can we do? I'm really interested in the capacity for ensembles to do more, as beings, I'm very interested in that, in what ensembles can do, both on a dance floor, in a kind of rarefied space, but also in the world. What happens if a law office was an ensemble and worked with ensemble practices? You know, how would people have to be different together? How would we stop this incessant insistence on boundaries, uncrossable boundaries, and allow, not that I'm saying boundaries aren't important, they're important, but they're not the whole deal. And they do not offer the capacities that the unbound does. The rebound, the forming, the dynamics of a boundary that refuses to remain in place. A boundary that is constantly appearing and vanishing because it has reformed into something new. I'm very interested in that, and that is what inactive practices can do when we become ensembles and play and think it through again. Let's think it through again by doing it. Thinking, in this case, I mean is not head-based, but it's body-based thinking. Let's think it through again. But that's me being passionate, you know. I really think there's so much here for dancers. I think dancers are, once again, I'll say dancers are so important, so critical to the world. We haven't even spoken about the creative practice that is dancing. And I would love to, at some point, talk about creativity. Maybe the next ISSC, the next Breaking Bread, rather, could be, not the next ISSC, but the next Breaking Bread could be about creative practice. How important the imagination is in the making of our experience, and why creative practices are important in that. And of course, once again, I'm still thinking not just of art making, but also of research, imagination within the context of research, which of course is part of the reason why scientists cannot do this work. Because then the imagination is such a critical part of each and every action as we engage with the world. It is, our hour is up, and I want to thank all of you for coming.
Yay, I have a little conclusion for us all. This has been Breaking Bread with Nita Little, a digital series that she offers for free and posts online afterward. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next month with a new topic, and we hope to see you back here too. For more information on these and other upcoming events, classes, and offerings, you can head over to Nita's website at nitalittle.com.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Leanne.